2009年是中国的牛年。这是充满机遇的一年。牛寓意着强壮，但仅仅有力量是不够的，它还是智勇双全的象征。牛代表着新的起点，只要具有牛的这种精神，人们就会获得成功。
We're away in Melbourne for 2009. Jenson Button is away. Button's pushed off.
Kubica behind Rubens is on prime. He could be a threat.
Is this going to be an extraordinary victory for the Brawn team? Jenson Button crosses the line, takes the checkered flag. It's a 1-2 finish. Button from Barrichello. The smiles are on Ross Brawn and Sir Richard Branson.
It's been a good day, and you think that in front it's easy, but it's not. You know, it was still a tough race for me.
Just sensational, and I can't really put it into words.
Obviously going to enjoy myself tonight a little bit, not too much, and then I'm off to Malaysia, so yeah, looking forward to it.
Can Jenson Button translate his second successive pole position into a second successive victory for Brawn GP?
What an immense lap from Jenson Button.
Heavy rain expected soon.
It never rains, it pours. Look at the amount of water on the track. The race has been stopped. Will this race restart, or will this be the end of it? It's 2 out of 2 then for Jenson Button.
So, is this the weekend of the hat-trick? Welcome to qualifying for the third race of the 2009 season, the Chinese Grand Prix, live from Shanghai. I suppose in some ways you could argue that Brawn have already enjoyed their third win of the season after their victory in a Paris courtroom on Wednesday, and now fans are keen to focus their attention back on the track. Jenson Button is keen to keep things exactly as they are. Because so far his season simply couldn't be bettered. 2 poles, 2 wins and 15 points on the board after the washout in Malaysia resulted in half points being awarded last weekend. And after a 2-week break, we're back in the East, China's economic hub, the booming financial capital, Shanghai. Traditionally one of the final races of the calendar, we're here 6 months early this year at a track that's produced some breathtaking moments over the years. And a quick look at the calendar, and you can see the first 2 races indeed were dominated by Button and Brawn, and they'll be keen to keep their run going before the season heads to Europe after next weekend's stop in Bahrain. And Eddie Jordan will be with us in Bahrain, but he can't be here this week, so I'm delighted to say that joining David Coulthard and I in the Shanghai pit lane is Mike Gascoigne. And Mike, 20 years after you started your Formula One career with McLaren, the team behind you, you've stepped over to the other side of the fence, but I guess you've seen it all over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that seems a long time ago, and it's strange for me. First time in 15 years I haven't done the first few races, although able to follow them every session on the BBC, which was great. And to be here with the BBC is fantastic, but everything's the same, but everything a little bit different. And of course, the first time I had to think of what to wear because I don't have any team gear.
Well, I think he looks lovely, don't you, David?
Absolutely. I'm glad he just didn't put his pink shirt on either today.
Who would wear a pink shirt on the television, eh? You and your technical directors, though, you must be sort of loving your moment in the limelight, because this year no one's really talking about the drivers. They're all talking about the aerodynamics, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we had a massive rule change for 2009, KERS introduced, but also very big aerodynamic changes to significantly reduce the amount of downforce these cars have. But being Formula One cars, they still have more downforce than any other form of racing car, and aerodynamics is still king, as we've seen with all the controversy that's been around certain areas of the car, and it's still the thing that makes the difference.
And the good news, DC, in terms of on the track, is that as much as we've all been focusing on the politics surrounding Formula One, the racing has been just as exciting. All kinds of stories happening out there.
Yeah, I think it's been a great start to the season. Obviously, the mix has been changed. If you're a Ferrari McLaren fan, you won't be very happy with what you've seen in the first 2 Grand Prix. But obviously, Brawn delighted that Jenson's been able to pick up a couple of victories. Great for British motorsport, and makes for a very exciting season.
And if we take a look at the driver standings, actually, we can see just how dominant Jenson Button is at the moment. I mentioned it at the start of the programme. 2 weeks ago, he picked up 5 points in Malaysia. That gives him 15 points overall at the moment. And if you're as good at maths as I'm sure Mike is, you'll actually notice there that Toyota, Braun and Williams, their drivers have hoovered up about 80% of the points available so far. However, the rest of the teams, well, they're not happy about it. Some of them think that their cars are illegal, thanks to a part at the rear that until now has really only been the preserve of conversations in pit lanes and in technical meetings. It's called the diffuser, and it's at the back of the car, and it's all about helping the cars stick to the track a bit better. Before we discuss precisely what happened this week, here's Mike to tell us what all this diffuser fuss is actually about.
Here, if we look at the rear view of the Ferrari, we can see the diffuser area of the car, which is used to accelerate the air and produce downforce. In order to limit the amount of downforce these cars produce, they've adopted a maximum height for the diffuser. And here you can very clearly see, stretched across here in a straight line, the maximum height. No part of the diffuser can go above that. And above it, we see the rear crash structure. You can see this is very square and unaerodynamically shaped because it has no effect on the airflow. If we move on and look at the McLaren, as well as the Ferrari, we can see they're very, very similar. And you see once again very clearly this maximum height that the diffuser can go to. No part of the diffuser is above that. And once again, when we see this crash structure, very square and unaerodynamically shaped. If we move on and look at the Toyota, one of the 3 cars that's taken a different view, we can see a very different and more complex solution. On the outer portion of the diffuser, we can once again see this maximum height. That's as the other cars. But in the central part, you see that it moves upwards, and you can see this rear crash structure is aerodynamically shaped as it's acting as part of the diffuser to create more downforce. In order to make sure this is legal, they've also put another small piece of diffuser in here which shadows this higher part, and hence this is why they're called the double-deck diffusers. If we look moving on at the Braun car, that's taken it a little bit further. We can once again see this very aerodynamically shaped rear crash structure, which is acting as the diffuser, but also the Braun car has taken this on further, and in front of the diffuser has cut some holes in the flat part of the underfloor, which channels even more air into this central area, creating even more downforce and hence improved lap time.
So, Mike, you sort of swapped your pens and paper and drawing designs for a TV screen, especially for us. But for some people who are watching this wondering why there's such a fuss over one small part at the back of a car, just explain how much of a difference a really good diffuser can make.
Well, talking to the people in the pit lane, the engineers, they're saying that it brings about a 5% increase in downforce for no drag. And as a rough rule of thumb on an average circuit, about 1% increase in downforce is worth about 1/10 of a second. So they're talking in total half a second. Now, we saw the grid covered in the last couple of races by 1.5 seconds, so a half second is a pretty big chunk of that.
Yeah, it's a big deal indeed, and an illegal car would mean no points so far and a radical rethink for the 3 teams involved in the double diffuser controversy. Well, this week in Paris, the FIA put the whole thing to bed and we finally got our answer, and it wasn't the 3 teams in question who'd be having to rethink their design. Here's Ted.
This week's FIA appeal court hearing effectively decided the contenders for this year's World Championship. Ross Brawn needed every inch of his 6'4" frame just to make his exit to the airport. The arguments between the teams were typically bitter, with Ferrari's QC Nigel Tozzi, seen here in the blue shirt, calling Ross Brawn a man of supreme arrogance.
Well, Mr. Tozzi is a hired gun. He has a certain character which fits in certain cases and doesn't fit in others, and his accusation of a person of supreme arrogance is because I disagree with their point of view. So I think you'd have to say that 6 stewards, the FIA technical department, and 5 judges are also people of supreme arrogance because they disagree with his view as well. So I felt confident once someone started a personal attack that their case was weak, because normally those people start personal attacks when they have a weak case. And so Mr. Tozzi starting with a personal attack on me gave me some confidence that he didn't have much else to go on.
Ferrari, Red Bull and Renault lost, so Brawn, Toyota and Williams keep their points. But the Ferrari boss suspects the speed at which the verdict was declared on Wednesday morning suggests the court had made its mind up early on.
All the people were there since that there was already decision taken You know, it was easy at the end. The court had to leave, and in the morning straight away, you know, the confirmation of the decision. So it's a strange feeling, but we are assured that it was not correct.
There is some ambiguity in the regulations, and we're talking about the effectively hole in the floor to permit a secondary diffuser, which obviously creates a considerable amount more downforce. The debate was as to whether that hole was actually a hole from where it was located on the floor. To a non-engineer such as myself, if you can stick your finger in it, it's a hole. So you know, that was effectively the rule that we were working to, and based on the work carried out within the overtaking working group.
With the benefit of the earlier work we started, I offered in March and proposed and put on the table a raft of changes that would have stopped what's happened. They were far more restrictive regulations, but the other teams didn't want to take that position, which makes it a little bit galling that we're now being criticised, having offered that choice when these rules are being formulated.
The sporting working group will want to have the clever diffusers banned for next year. Until then, fighting teams with a 5-race head start, the others are desperate to catch up.
It's very difficult now to switch to a diffuser concept like this, because it affects apparently all the aero upstream of the diffuser as well, so you cannot simply put it on the car. We have to redevelop the aero concept of the car. And that will take time, it will take money, and I can tell you today when we are there.
It's an expensive exercise, because for us it's almost a B-spec car. It's the complete rear end of the car, which is time and money.
McLaren have turned up in China with a new diffuser featuring a vent in the central section. It's made them go quicker, while Renault have their own interpretation running on the car for the first time today.
Ferrari, McLaren, Renault, they're very, very competent, very capable teams, and they'll be back up there very quickly. But to be honest, if they think it's just the diffuser that's making a difference, then they might be a little bit disappointed, but we'll see.
And that's the point, actually, Mike, isn't it? I mean, we can see McLaren's brand new nose cone, which they've brought out specifically for this race here, which demonstrates that the teams are working on all aspects of the car. So if some of the protesting teams are thinking too much about a diffuser, they could be placing all their eggs in one basket, really.
Yeah, it's not just one item, because you've got to then channel the air to that item correctly. So that's the front wing, it's the side pods, it's everything. So as Ross said, you know, for some of the teams, simply half a second isn't going to do it. That's not going to put a Ferrari on the front row anyway. But also, to get that full effect, it's not just changing the diffuser and copying that area, you've got to carry it through the whole car.
And interesting to hear there that some of the teams focused on Ross's arrogance and saying that really he's the guy that's culpable for this whole situation. But you were there when it was discussed by him that he was happy to tell people that there could be two interpretations of this rule, weren't you?
Yeah, I was in the technical working group meeting. We were actually discussing an area under the nose box that there was a loophole in. And Ross raised this and said there's several other loopholes. And when you write a whole new set of technical regulations, you're looking at all aspects of the car, and it's impossible to get it 100% right. And Ross raised it, and two teams, BMW especially, just said no, we're well ahead with our development, we don't want any change. And it has to be unanimous in the technical working group to change anything. And as soon as one team objects, that's it, no point to discuss it anymore. And also Renault objected. And of course the strange thing is, normally you object because you think you've got an advantage. The two teams that were rejected are two of those that missed out.
Well, it's now been put to bed, it's all over very quickly. Do the two of you agree with the decision?
Well, the FIA are there to govern the rules and regulations, so if they passed it before we went to Melbourne, I don't see how they could have done anything other than confirm that the car is within the regulations, their interpretation of the regulations.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing is, OK, in the concept of these cars, we wanted to limit the diffuser height. But at the end of the day, once the rules are agreed, it doesn't matter about the intention or the spirit of the rule. It's how the regulation is written in black and white, because when it goes to the international court, you're in a court, a lawyer's deciding what that sentence means in English and black and white. And when you read it, they're allowed and they're legal.
OK, well, certainly the diffusers have been the focus of the fast teams. McLaren have been the focus of the slow ones, struggling on the track and scandal off it as well. Lee McKenzie now reports on McLaren's search for speed.
What a difference a point makes. At the end of last season, after 18 grueling races, it won Lewis Hamilton a world championship. This year, after just 2 races, it's created a scandal within F1.
Lewis, you need to allow the Toyota through now.
And cost McLaren's stalwart Dave Ryan his job.
I'm not a liar.
But has it also led to the stepping down of the team's leader Ron Dennis, who devoted over 40 years to the sport? Complete control of the team is now in the hands of Martin Whitmarsh.
Ron has made it clear, I think, that he made the decision of his own volition and he felt it was the right time. He's got a fresh new challenge going in a different direction, and that's what Ron has said, and that's how I know it.
You speak about all this change and going forward. Do you have any concerns that you may still be seen as being part of that old regime?
Well, I hadn't thought about it, but I mean, I've been part of McLaren for 20 years, so that's absolutely correct. And I think if you look at, if you refer to the old regime, I think, as I said, it did win a few world championships along the way, and we did some things right, but we weren't always good at learning from our mistakes, and we've got to be better at that, and we've got to accept that we have made mistakes, and we've got to learn.
And whilst decisions were made thousands of miles away, it was Lewis who was left to feel the heat of the world's media.
When you have any fun, you just want...
I wasn't disappointed. I think I was surprised, but I hadn't heard about it, so I was just as surprised as the rest of my team.
But amongst all the politics, there's a small matter of winning races or at least making the car quicker. Even during the race weekend, parts were delivered so the team could make necessary upgrades. Their performance improved and Hamilton went fastest in first practice, the first time he's topped any timing sheet since China last season. The decision to step back from F1 is one which will not displease Bernie Ecclestone and Max Mosley, according to Ron Dennis. Whether it's enough to safeguard the team from further penalty from the World Motorsport Council is another matter, as is Lewis Hamilton's future with McLaren, the team that helped make him world champion.
Lewis, there's been, over the last few weeks, there's been a bit of rumours that maybe you wouldn't see out your 5-year deal, you're 1 year in. Would you like to say that you will stay here for the next 5 years?
I mean, what can I say? I mean, I'm contracted to the team, I'm happy where I am, so...
So yes?
No, I'm happy where I am, so...
Well, interesting reaction there from Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, I think we have to appreciate that it's not the first time he's being asked that question, and however many camera crews here, however many journalists probably ask him the same thing repeatedly, and certainly I used to get a little bit fed up from time to time having to try and rekindle the same answer and make it sound fresh. A simple yes would have probably just taken the heat off him, but he's obviously distracted and not enjoying all these sort of lines of questioning at the moment.
Well, we've heard some good noises from both the McLaren drivers this weekend. They seem a bit happier about the new parts being put onto the car, but of course they're now working without any involvement from Ron Dennis, and it's probably just worth a mention. I mean, you've worked for him, you've worked for him as well. He was a special guy to motorsport and did a great deal in his time, didn't he?
Yeah, I think we need to forget the last couple of years, and Ron has contributed a huge amount to Formula One, and he gave me my first job in Formula One and was good to me when I left. And I think everyone has to have a lot of respect for him and what he's achieved in the World Championships and races he's won.
OK. Should we go for a little walk?
Yeah, indeed.
Let's do it. We must apologise, though, if all you can hear is the PA system. They get very excited about the Grand Prix here in China, and there are a few fans in, but an awful lot more music. And actually, Christian Klein is here, who's the BMW test driver at the moment. Christian, thanks for chatting to us. Tell us what life's like for a test driver at the moment.
Well, it's actually very difficult this year to be a test driver. Obviously, during winter you have some test days, but then actually in the season there is no testing at all. And hopefully it will change for next year again, because it makes it also very hard for a young driver, for example, to come into Formula One, because there's just no testing anymore.
You're not a young driver. You've had a couple of seasons in Formula One already. Is this now the role that you see yourself doing in the future? Do you want to get back into racing? What's your plan?
No, definitely not. Obviously, I'm test reserve driver at BMW this year, but I'm doing also sports car to do some races this year, and to keep basically race fit. And the target is to get back to Formula One and race it. That's for sure the target. You never know if it's going to work. That's why I'm focused also on sports car.
during the actual weekend as a reserve driver, what sort of things do you get up to? Are you in there with the engineers, working with the drivers, or what is your input?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I'm in all the meetings, obviously, to really be up to date what's happening on the weekend. In case you have to jump in the car, you have to know exactly what's going on. So I'm basically, the schedule is same as the race driver, and basically just on standby all the time.
And we saw Nick Heidfeld make the most of the wet weather last weekend. Robert Kubica, though, yet to finish a race this season. What's the general atmosphere like inside the team? Everyone feeling good?
Not well. It could be better, to be honest. You know, in the beginning of the season, over winter testing, we looked actually quite good and shiny. And then, you know, the races so far hasn't been so good for us. We were lucky in Malaysia to be on the podium. But from the performance side, we're definitely, you know, over half a second down on pace.
Yeah, Christian, I mean, you talk about getting ready to jump in the car at any point, but of course, as the season goes on, you won't have driven it for many months. That's going to get more and more difficult, isn't it?
Definitely, that's a very difficult situation for sure. For example, if you have to jump in the end of the season into the car, you're 8 months nearly out of the car, has no experience what's going on with the car, no, you know, all the development what's have been through the car. So it makes it really hard, and you know, that's why we think about what we can do to really get some tests back for the test drivers.
Christian, thank you very much. Keep your chin up. Good luck. See you later on. A very tough time actually for test driver DC, isn't it? You know, it's not the job it once was.
No, indeed, and it was all coming back to me for a moment there, realising that as I'm actually the reserve driver for Red Bull, I could actually have to jump back in the car at some point if something unfortunate happened to the race driver. So let's hope that they don't slip in any banana skins.
Look at Christian working hard, got his proper BMW gear on, and you're just hanging out with the BBC. Just wandered past Renault there, Mike. Obviously, you've worked for them in the past. Let's have a quick mention of Nelson Piquet Jr. He would love to make it out of Q1 today, wouldn't he, at least?
Yeah, I think he really needs to. I mean, he's really been struggling. I think against Fernando, he's been beaten 20-0 in qualifying. And that's going to weigh, I mean, as David will be able to tell you, that's what starts to weigh heavily on your mind, and the pressure's on him. His father's here supporting him as much as he can, and I think he needs it. But looking at his times yesterday in the session, he's so up and down and so inconsistent. You look at Fernando, it's bang, 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 every lap it's there, and he's up and down all over the place. And then we see him regularly after sort of 12 laps of a Grand Prix making a mistake and spinning off. You know, David.
Yeah, well, indeed, but I think that you know, Flavio makes no secret of the fact that Fernando is his number one driver. He gets all the support. They expect him to get the results. So it must be difficult psychologically for Nelson. But that said, it's his opportunity. He's got to take it and make the best. And you know, I think as we said in Malaysia, he's got to start pulling some results soon. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for him to stay in Formula One.
Yeah, possibly the toughest seat in Formula One. Now, let's just have a little poke inside Toyota here. I know that last weekend, or a couple of weekends ago, Martin Brundle tried to have a good look at the diffuser. They quickly stopped him. Let's see how close we can go, because, of course, Mike, you worked for Toyota for a long time. This will be their 125th race without a win. They seem to be on form, though, this year. What do you think has changed in the team?
Well, I think, you know, they've had an excellent start. 2 podiums in the first races is an excellent start for them. And Jarno Trulli looked very quick this morning, was on the front row in the last race. I think one of the things for me, they're starting to make better strategy calls. They were always very, very conservative, running very heavy cars in races, not really being aggressive. And we saw in Brazil where they stayed on dry tyres and nearly cost Lewis the championship. We saw in the last race with Timo Glock putting intermediates on it when everyone thought it was going to rain heavily. They've started making some aggressive calls and doing a good job, and they'll want to get that win under the belt. And of course, they're one of the diffuser teams. They know people are going to catch them up now over the next few races, so they'll want results now.
It's probably worth a quick mention of trust here in your team, DC. I mean, we can see that quite a lot of the bodywork is currently off the Toyota at the moment there. Certainly the Toyota of Timo Glock, and let me have a look over there. Yeah, and Jarno Trulli as well. I was watching yesterday Fernando Alonso sitting in the Renault while there were guys underneath screwing new parts onto the bottom of his car, and he left the pit lane just a few seconds later. Is it ever slightly unnerving for a driver to look at a car like this half an hour before you start quali and it sort of looks in bits?
No, it never ever crossed my mind. I think that it's an ability of the driver just to have absolute trust in his mechanics and the design process, and you grow up through the ranks, and you don't arrive in Formula One not with any experience of having mechanics and relying on people, so you've probably got 10-15 years of experience already. They are very skilled people. You know, they have very extensive checklists. These cars are engineered to the highest level. Of course, they're stressed to the maximum, so occasionally you do have failures, but that's always going to be the case when you're developing new technology.
Okay, well, let's quickly hear from Timo Glock, whose car we're looking at the moment. He's out the back of the pit lane with Ted.
Well, Timo, terrible luck. What was the first sign of the failure?
Upshift on start and finish straight. Fifth gear didn't go in proper, and then had to come back to the pits, and at the end got the penalty.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking really good in practice. How was the car?
I did only 3 laps, so I was the first guy out on the track, and not really representative to do any comment on it, so difficult to say.
What do you think you can do? I mean, you still score points, have a good race from the pit lane, and in Melbourne, very different circumstances, but what do you think you can do in the race?
Yeah, we have to wait and see. I mean, qualifying, we have to go aggressive now, I think, and just try to go so much forward as possible and in the grid, and then we see.
Does that mean taking the fuel out in Q3?
We don't know, we'll see. We have to discuss that.
Okay, thanks, Timo.
Well, the big news there then for Timo Glock, new gearbox for him, 5-place grid penalty, and obviously that's big news for the engineers as well. I mean, these guys work around the clock on these cars to try and get them ready.
Yeah, I mean, following up on David's point about the confidence he has in it, these guys rebuild these cars totally every day. You know, it's a totally normal thing. So every day of David's driving life, when he's got in a car, it's been totally rebuilt. And, you know, the number of failures you've had is very, very small. And, you know, I remember in Monaco doing a 40-minute engine change. The guy goes out, you know, we changed everything on the car. First lap, he's flat through the tunnel. That's what they used to do, and that's what makes them racing drivers.
Right, let's walk and talk. Do you both expect Toyota to put an end to that 125 race wait for a win?
Yeah, I think so. They've clearly got a good package this year, capitalising the fact that Ferrari and McLaren are struggling, so obviously you lose 4 cars to compete against straight away. And the pace has been good, so you know, no matter how good the Braun car is, in any given season, no one really maintains a completely dominant year.
Toro Rosso tyres just coming past us there. And Mark, you've got a sneaky little fancy for Toro Rosso this weekend. You think they're improving pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah, I think I mean, obviously the Red Bull cars look very, very good. And the best of the non-diffuser cars, if you like. And the Toro Rosso is basically the same car, albeit with the Ferrari engine. But they got it out very late, very little testing. But I think we can expect them to move up to their sort of parent team's pace and really pick it up. And I think that's what we're seeing this weekend.
Well, DC, this is where we would have found you 12 months ago. How does it feel taking a look at Sebastian Vettel's car?
Yeah, well, I actually feel a lot more comfortable standing outside Red Bull than some of the other teams. And obviously, these were the guys that I've worked with. And just seeing out of camera here. But,
see if we can get Jonathan
Wheatley. Yeah, Jonathan
Wheatley,
the team manager. Maybe,
Jonathan?
Maybe we can... So
just pop in and have a quick word.
Yeah, indeed.
David was just saying he feels more comfortable being with us than he was in the team. Maybe that's because you were always on his case or something.
It might be. Yeah, we've known each other for some time, so we sort of a more comfortable relationship, I would probably say.
Well, in actual fact, we go way back to karting. So my karting journey in the early 80s took me to be a Formula 1 driver. Jonathan, maybe you could run us through your journey from karting to being team manager here.
Yeah, crikey, I think mine started a little bit earlier than yours. Yeah, mine started at 9 years old at Rye House. I went from there to an indentured apprenticeship with Ferrari, the enemy now. On from that through to historic motorsport. Started in Formula 1 in 1990 as a mechanic. Then I ended up running with Michael Schumacher. Then ended up running a car at Benetton, chief mechanic. And then I got poached to come here 3 years ago as team manager.
So now you're team manager. Just explain for people at home what that involves precisely.
Well, I think the biggest aspect of the role is building the team, and then the second biggest aspect is ensuring that we adhere to the FIA sporting regulations at all times.
So during the session, like here we are half an hour before the qualifying session, what are you doing checking with mechanics, and after that, what do you do on the pit wall? We often see the camera going there. What is your actual role?
Well, what I've been doing now is just making sure the cars are ready to start the session on time, that there's no problems whatsoever. Checking, we move our pit box back a little bit for qualifying so that we can get the cars out of the garage. Want to make sure all that's right. Fuel rigs are all ready, all of our equipment's ready. And then mainly doing the radio checks, the intercom checks prior to the session. And then in the session itself, I'm quite busy. I'm the primary point of contact with the FIA. One of my biggest jobs is positioning the cars correctly on the circuit so they don't trip each other up, and calling the pit stops.
And of course making sure that veteran Scottish drivers do the business as well. Thoughts ahead of this weekend? You've had a bit of bad luck so far this season, haven't you?
Yeah, we worked tremendously hard this winter. Got a great team of people. The factory, the hours that have been put in at the factory and the circuit, the frustration to not come away with the points that we deserve at this point is palpable. So we intend to do something about that.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much. I'm sure you're very busy, so off you go. Crack on with whatever you're doing. Thanks for chatting to us. Very good to have a quick word with you. Now then, if you're a Formula One aficionado, which I expect you are if you're out of bed watching us pre-qualifying this time in the morning, then you'll know all about this. However, if you're new to the sport, then this is what ballast is all about.
Formula One cars have a minimum weight limit of 605 kilos, including the driver. Driver weights vary by up to 20 kilos, and the cars themselves by even more, depending on the design. Most car and driver combinations are still potentially underweight, needing ballast to reach the minimum limit. Tungsten steel is firmly fixed in the underfloor and the front wing to both help tune the car's handling and keep the centre of gravity low.
Now, we all know that so far this has been a season of change in Formula One, but some things just stay the same. I have to be honest and say that as we wandered down there, I was rather surprised that we didn't bump into Flavio Briatore. He's almost become part of the pit lane furniture here in Formula One, and despite a long time in the sport, guiding the likes of Michael Schumacher and discovering Fernando Alonso, he's as driven for success as ever.
As the only man in the paddock to have led 2 different teams to Formula One world titles, Flavio Briatore thinks not just about championship success, but also of Oscar-winning performances.
It's the same movie, the same director with a different actor.
The last 2 seasons have not provided the happy ending that Flavio's F1 film required, despite victories last year.
Fantastic drive, fantastic. 2 in a row.
You know, the victory is always a good medicine when you are sick, you know, I think so.
But Flavio feels that it's Formula One who needs a shot in the arm and a big wake-up call.
In the last 10 years, I was there, we are in this big bubble.
2008 saw Alonso return to Renault, and by the end of the season the relationship was working, both back in the comfort zone, winning together.
With Fernando we worked very, very hard to improve in the car. And Fernando had an amazing passion. And this was a really surprise for me as well, because normally Fernando is the guy, if everything goes well, it's fantastic. If everything goes less well, it's less fantastic, you know. But I mean, it was amazing working with him last year, because he was much more mature and more responsibility. And in the end, you know, we achieved our goal to win in 1 or 2 races and improving the car. And the improvement of last year sure is in the line for the car of 2009.
Some people wondered if you would manage to hang on to Fernando for this season, and some people wondered if you would want to keep Nelson for this season.
Last year I was not happy about the performance on Nelsinho, but need to understand as well, it was the first year in Formula One. Driving with Fernando really is not the easy job in the world. And all this together, plus the relationship between Fernando and Nelson is very good. This, you know, in the team you don't need fight. Already you need fighting with Ferrari, with McLaren, with Toyota, etc., etc. You don't need fight inside of the team as well. I mean, for me this is very important. I never believed to have a 2-star in the team is helpful. And, you know, I think so if you see the experience, you see McLaren with Senna, Prost, and after it was repeating again with Fernando and Hamilton, and you see Prost with Alesi. I mean, it's not working. It's simple as that. In this moment, Fernando is the best driver we have, and we put a lot of effort. But Piquet have the same service of Fernando. This is quite clear.
Michael Schumacher wins.
When you look at the early 90s, when you had the Michael Schumacher era, when you won the World Championships, you compare that to the 2000s when you have Alonso. How do you compare those eras?
We done exactly the same, you know. I don't have the money at the time in Benetton to pay the salary to Prost or Gerard or Ayrton. My idea was, you know, the team is small, but you need find somebody to grow in with the team. And when we started again in 2001, I have Fernando. Fernando was with me, and was exactly the same. Like, I see already this movie, and what is changed is the actor.
All the time that you've been in Formula One, what do you think the biggest change has been?
The money. We spend more money for have less show. Basically, this is what we spend. You know, we just spend more money. In 1994, we won the championship with Michael with a budget of less than 30 million pounds. And if we see 1994 race, I guarantee you, was much more entertainment and not a 2007 race or 2008 race. Simple like that. What increases only the cost for no reason.
You've always been a big campaigner for cost-cutting in Formula One. Do you think that Formula One is finally going in the right direction when it comes to the finances?
You know, everybody believes everything collapsed, but no Formula One. Finally, we come back in the square one. We are a racing team. You know, sometimes some team had 1,000 people, 1,200 people for the racing. You know, it's quite ridiculous to have 2 cars in the grid and 1,000 people behind. I mean, we need to come back to the basic. You know, our core business is racing. We're working very hard. But what is important to us, to me, to Renault, to be in the first 3-4, to have the possibility every race to be in the podium and have the possibility to win in 3-4 races.
Well, I'm delighted to say that Pat Simmons, the Renault engineering boss, has joined us now. And Pat, always interesting to hear what Flavio has to say. He's always got something to say, and of course you've been by his side for an awful long time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he is one of the characters of Formula One. He's a lateral thinker. I think, you know, the fact he hasn't been in Formula One as long as some others is a good thing. He knows how to entertain the public, and I think he's doing a great job at it.
He doesn't seem very happy this week, though. He's still a bit of an entertainer, but not a very happy one after the diffuser hour was finally put to bed. He even called Jenson Button a paracaro earlier this week. Now, I'm not great at Italian, but I don't think it was particularly complimentary.
No, I don't think it is, but I think it's improved Jenson's Italian, hasn't it?
Yes, maybe it has. And Jenson was actually sort of, I suppose, coming back at him a bit by saying that you were keen to get hold of Jenson for this season. Is that true?
I think we talked to a lot of people, you know, through the winter. Anyone who's available, we'll assess them. I personally think Jenson's a damn good driver, and he's showing it at the moment. You know, he hasn't been in the greatest cars for the last couple of years, but he's showing what he can do now, and good luck to him.
Well, as things stand, you've got Fernando Alonso and Nelsinho in your cars. How would you sum up your start to 2009?
Repeat that?
How would you sum up your start to the year?
Well, it's not been good. You know, I don't want to harp on about the diffuser thing. We took it to court, we lost the case, and now we're getting on with it. And as you've seen this morning, we've got the double-deck diffuser on the car. Had a few problems, it caught fire this morning, but you know, that's what happens when you rush development. But it hasn't been the start that we wanted. We were down on performance, but we worked bloody hard to get it back, and that's what we're going to continue doing.
Yeah, Pat, you've got a new diffuser on Fernando's car, shipped it out and fitted it overnight. Yeah, it's a strange thing about Formula One. You'd have been instrumental in preparing the case to ban them on Tuesday in the court. What's your view of what's gone on?
Well, that was Tuesday, and today's Saturday, and as you say, things move on. I think, you know, we should explain that what we wanted was clarity of the rules, and you know that, Mike, we all want that. We want to understand it. And I think, unfortunately, with this whole business with diffusers has really got down to semantics. It's got down to legal talk of what's a hole, what's an edge. And, you know, those sort of things aren't terribly interesting. What I want to know is, how do we build our cars? What are we allowed to do? What aren't we allowed to do? We've got that cleared up now, so we've got on with it. All the time we were preparing our case, we were working on the alternative. We got it on the car this morning. You know, that's reaction, I think.
You know, interesting to listen to the technical chat between you guys, but looking in the garage, I can't help but feel it's not the prettiest of cars. Aren't racing cars meant to look sexy? Is that not part of what makes them quick?
The best looking ones are the ones that go past the checkered flag first, so that's what we're working on.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
And Pat, you've run the diffuser now this morning. You'll have done all your simulation work with the aero numbers. Is it giving you the performance you expect?
Yeah, absolutely. The aero numbers from the tunnel came out a little bit better than we'd even hoped for. We got some short running this morning. The measurements on the track look good. Again, they're better than we'd hoped for. They meet the tunnel figures. We're pretty happy with it. The problem was we didn't get many laps. We had the exhaust a little bit close to the bodywork because, of course, you know, these days we can't go out testing. We have to do it here. And in this case, we couldn't even get it ready for yesterday. So it's testing on the Saturday morning. We only got 6 laps on it, but we've got to go for it.
I think it was Ken Tyrrell who said the first car across the line is the beautiful one. I'm sure you'd agree with that if you were first across the line this weekend. But Fernando has already said that he thinks the outcome of this diffuser round has decided the world title already. Would you go as far as that?
No, I wouldn't. Look, you know, we've had 2 races. There's a long way to go. We've shown that we can react very quickly. We can get one of the new style diffusers onto our car just a few days after the judgment in the Court of Appeal in Paris. There's a long way to go. There's lots of things that can happen. We're fighting and we will continue to fight.
But in the financial climate, a good season would be very welcome.
That's right, yeah. I mean, you know, these things are expensive to do, but that's a different story.
OK, Pat, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to us. Very good indeed. Now, if there are more scandals throughout Formula One this season, I think we can be pretty much guaranteed that the scrutineers are going to be close to the action.
Three days before every Grand Prix, each car must pass scrutineering checks for both safety and eligibility. Think of it as a posh MOT. Dimensions and weights are thoroughly checked, and loads are applied to aerodynamic parts to make sure they don't flex too much. Here they are checking the minimum ground clearance, the front wing height, the rear wing overall size, and the total width of the car. Official seals are applied to the engine and gearbox, and only then is the car cleared to race.
Right, only about 15 minutes to go now until qualifying, which means that we have to exit the pit lane, otherwise some kind of scrutineer will no doubt be telling us off before too long. So while we make our way out to the paddock, here's a little look at all the news that's been coming your way in Formula One in the past few days.
Not only is this Ferrari's worst start to the season since 1992, but with a diffuser ruling forcing a redesign of their car, Ferrari are pessimistic that they'll be able to improve enough to overhaul Toyota, Williams, Red Bull and Brawn.
For sure it will be very, very difficult. I'm expecting that Ross's car and Toyota and Williams will be flying away, and we will try to catch up as soon as possible. But for sure the championship is taking a very clear direction.
It won't be easy. I mean, we need to work very hard. We have some teams which they have a different car, so it won't be so easy to catch them, but I think it can be possible.
Kimi Räikkönen doesn't appear to hold out such hope. After just 2 races, Kimi has thrown in the towel on this year's World Championship. Fernando Alonso is believed to have a Ferrari option for 2010.
We're never going to be in a position anymore to win the championship, but hopefully we can improve the car and try to win some races later on this season. So I think that's a realistic aim.
Can you explain what was happening in Malaysia? Because we saw the guys preparing Kimi's car to go out again, but then we saw Kimi having an ice cream and a Coke in the back of the garage.
No, because we were ready because we had a problem on curves. So because we had time, we tried to understand exactly the problem, but then it was a problem that was not good to go out. That's why I can anticipate you one thing, that we will not use curves for this weekend.
Considering Ferrari relied on KERS for much of their speed, that decision has not helped the car's performance.
It's not the major issue, but we are just slow. So I mean, we know more or less where we're losing, but it's nothing what we can change right away.
Meantime, Fernando Alonso has criticised Bridgestone's selection of the super soft tyre as one that must be run here on this track, which is notorious for high tyre wear. He's suggested a more direct way of spicing up the show.
If they want to make us doing these ridiculous laps, they can put us in a wet tire, you know, and maybe for 10 cars, you know, you do a drop, and if you pick up the wrong number, you put the wet tires for 5 laps, and you look stupid for 5 laps. And this is what we do with the super soft tires. So if they want to make interesting Formula One, it will be more funny to put wet tires than to put super soft.
And finally, the drivers have backed the FIA's decision not to restart the Malaysian Grand Prix, not least for the simple reason that most of them, including Massa, couldn't see where they were going.
I need a white visor, please, come on, white visor, otherwise I cannot see anything.
Felipe, baby, stay cool, we're bringing you the white visor, stay cool, we're in a good position, okay?
And we heard on the team radio Rob calling you Felipe baby. Does he say that very often?
No, not very often, to be honest. But I mean, we have a very good relationship. I don't feel really a baby, but sometimes, you know, on the difficult moments, you can express funny words.
Well, he doesn't feel like a baby, and to be fair to him, he hasn't acted like a baby either over the past couple of weeks. In fact, he's already come out and said that the times when he's been with a struggling team such as Sauber, he's learned that sometimes in Formula One you don't always win, whereas at Ferrari they're so used to winning, perhaps it's tougher for some of the people at the team.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got to keep your heads down and you've got to work hard, and when you're used to winning, you know, you're used to working in a certain way, you've got to look at what's changed and why aren't you winning, but you've got to not lose that focus and direction that you had, and keep doing the right things and not panic and having knee-jerk reactions and looking at things that just aren't important.
OK, so what's changed, DC? Because it felt like for a long time Ferrari had forgotten how to lose, and now they've definitely remembered, haven't they?
Well, indeed, and it was a long time before they entered that sort of dominant period. I think they won 10 Constructors' Championships over the last decade or so, but before that, it was well over a decade before they won the championship at all. So I think it goes in cycles. Obviously, this is a people business. You know, the name alone doesn't give you a right for success, and there's been a transition. Ross has left the team, Michael's left the team, Sean Todd has left the team. You know, that's obviously had an effect. Now, that doesn't diminish the quality of the people that are there, but whilst people are growing into their new roles, maybe certain things get missed. OK, well, Felipe Massa will be one guy desperate to have a better qualifying than he had a couple of weeks ago in Malaysia, and to do that, he's going to have to tame the track here in China. And I can tell you that the last two winners here have gone on to lift the world title, so if you can get to grips with this place, you can get to grips with the whole season.
It's a fun track. It's one of the nice tracks of the year. It will be very hard.
It's a good opportunity for overtaking.
Could be a good show again for the fans.
Well, in general, I don't like Shanghai. Shanghai is quite slippery and difficult to get the grip out of it. And it's a bit tricky one with this first corner, which is very, you know, quite open at the beginning and then it's very tight.
Turn 1 is pretty unique here, very difficult to come there flat out in 7th gear, and then it just gets tighter and tighter.
Go really quick in 6th, 7th gear and slow down to 2nd gear, really tricky one, really hard for the front left tire.
With the soft tires we will also have here, it will be very hard. We will see graining, which we've already seen in the past. Yeah, it's quite a special track. There's some very unique corners here, especially the two that are extremely long corners. One where you just slow down more and more and more, and the other one where you just accelerate more and more and more out of it.
The last corner, it seems very simple, but if you manage to cut it very well and have a very good exit, you can make a big difference.
Shanghai is a cool circuit. It's got a real great combination of corners. It's a very long circuit. You've got some good straights where you're able to overtake. I love driving the track. There's a real technique of driving some of those corners, and that's potentially why I won the last race. I was able to get on top of it. It was one of those weekends, come from a bad weekend, took all the negative energy, turned it into positive, came out on top, and people weren't expecting it. If you put your mind to it, you can do anything.
Well, DC, I'm sure you were grateful just to finish the Grand Prix here last season, because there were a few where you didn't finish them, and you've raced it with McLaren only the once, and you never really finished too high up here, did you? Was it always a struggle? Did you just not take to the track? What was it?
No, I actually enjoyed the circuit here, and one of my best qualifyings in the Red Bull, getting well into the top 10. It is a track that you feel as a driver, if you got the balance, you're able to push, and some of those high-speed corners out the back they talk about, you know, they really deliver the lap time if you can keep your foot nailed to the floor. But for whatever reason, over my career, I wasn't able to pick up a podium at this circuit.
We've already talked an awful lot about McLaren this morning. We can now actually hear from Pedro Della Rosa. He's the McLaren test driver. Here he is.
Well, Pedro, how are McLaren looking going into qualifying?
Well, we have been improving the car, and it's been a lot of work from the factory to send us, new parts here. And the fact is that we will be fighting to get into Q3. We were close in Malaysia. We expect here to at least with one car just try to make it, and that would be a massive boost of confidence for everyone, and like a reward for everyone in the factory. Because I repeat it, they've been sending parts. I mean, until last night they were just coming here, and this just proves how competitive it is and how difficult it is as well.
Of course, very different car to last year when Lewis won here, but he does go well here. He likes this place, doesn't he?
I think he is extremely fast. I mean, we all know that, and he's quick here. He's always been. But I also think that we have quite a good car for this race. We always have a very strong front end, and this race, this circuit, China, is about having a very strong front end. There's a lot of understeer, a lot of front graining, and we are good on that area now. So I think it suits our car. It suits Luis, but all the circuits will suit Luis because he's quick everywhere.
Thanks, Pedro.
Well, talking of Lewis being fast, he flew to victory here just 3 races ago because, of course, China was at the back end of the calendar last season. It shows you how much McLaren have changed their priorities. If just getting one car into Q3 would be a huge boost.
Yeah, I mean, some of the teams like Ferrari and McLaren, the teams you expected to be at the top, BMW as well, they're firmly mired in the midfield at the moment, and obviously the diffuser is the one thing that they're focusing on. And as Ross mentioned, it's not just that, because they've slipped a long way with these cars and really missed the development. And for me as an engineer, it's great when you have a big regulation change, because it's where you've got a chance to be clever and show that you can do a better job than the others, and Ross down at Brawn and some others, Toyota, Williams, they've clearly steeled a march on it and disrupted the order, which is great.
We've spoken quite a lot already this season about the fact that if anyone can improve their grid position, it's going to be McLaren with the resources and the people they've got, and we've seen already this weekend they're starting to add things onto the car that look to be improving it.
Yeah, indeed, they're able to have parallel developments, and the fact that you don't have in-season testing, they'll be producing things, relying on their CFD, relying on the wind tunnel information, and bringing it here, running a 24-hour shift, I'm sure, on production. Some of the other smaller teams won't have the budget for that, simply. So, you know, McLaren, like Ferrari, will be more able to spend their way out of this trouble that they're in.
Yeah, and I mean, it's strange to hear Ferrari saying they're sort of almost giving up, and Stefano Domenicali sort of being very downbeat about everything. With their resources, surely they've got to be able to bounce back. And, you know, Flavio, on the other hand, still very bullish, and Pat, you know, very bullish at Renault. They want to get back up there, so it's very strange to hear the attitude from Ferrari.
When we spoke earlier in the week, you said that you think maybe 3 or 4 teams will have a new diffuser on here. You think lots of new parts will be arriving. Have you been slightly surprised how few teams have made big changes for this weekend?
Well, Renault obviously were on top of that and got it here, and they've been developing that for months, and that's, you know, they'd have been making it weeks ago. A small update from McLaren, but no one else really any major parts. I mean, I think a lot of them with these 4 flyaway races at the start of the year, it's very tough logistically to get all the parts, and to get new parts out to the races is very difficult. So I think when we get into Europe and to Barcelona, everyone will have been targeting that as a new aero package anyway, and I think that's where we'll see all the major changes.
OK, well, we have had a bit of a 2-week break, so now let's head back up to the commentary box for the first time in a little while. Jonathan Ledyard is up there, and Jonathan, good to get back to the racing, and perhaps a hat-trick of poles for Jenson Button.
It's looking good, you have to say, but Toyota are there, Red Bull are there. The interesting thing is, how well are Ferrari going to go? Because in Malaysia a couple of weeks ago, they were shocking, weren't they? And you were out watching them, Martin, yesterday, and they were almost undrivable, some of the cars.
Yes, the cars look very difficult in all conditions out there. Yes, never underestimate Ferrari, of course, and let's see what they can come up with this afternoon. They're definitely